secret moments behind RUNSEOKJIN Tour, Sunrise, Tears, and a Mother's Embrace. The RUNSEOKJIN Tour was originally billed as a private BTS tour that presented a reflective side of each member. But who would have thought, from behind the travel videos that are released on a limited basis and contemplative moments that seem to contain only beautiful scenery, a much deeper story is hidden about a sunrise, an unbearable cry, and a mother's embrace that finally happened after a long time. The tour took the members to different parts of the world. However, when the camera stops recording, when the sound of music is stopped for a moment, Jimin and Jungkook secretly choose a journey that is not just an escape but a quest. They chose Vietnam, not only because of its beauty, but because of a place north of Da Nang that the local people supposedly believe to be the point where anyone sitting there at dawn could hear back his inner voice, and that's where it all started. The morning was unusual. The sky was a little cloudy, and the sea breeze brought a chill piercing the skin. Jimin and Jungkook climbed faster than usual, as if there was something they wanted to catch up on right away. But none of them spoke. At the top, as the sun begins to slowly pop up, Jimin sat down first, while Jungkook stood a few meters behind him. Then the quiet voice broke. "I had a dream about him last night." Jimin nodded. Jungkook was still standing with his back to the light, his voice trembling. "I dreamed of my mother." He wasn't angry, he just hugged me. I woke up before I could say anything. Jimin did not answer immediately. He simply patted the side of the rock where he was sitting, hinting Jungkook to join in. Jungkook obeyed, without protest, without a word. Then her tears fell. It is not a loud cry that bursts out, but a quiet cry that only arises when a person has been holding everything alone for too long, and under the gentle light of the morning sun, Jimin touched her shoulder and let her cry. "You've been holding it all together for too long, woof. He doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to come home." A few days after that moment, they secretly booked a short flight to Busan. No staff, no documentation plan. Just the two of them. When he arrived in front of the house, a small house on the corner of the street where Jungkook grew up, he stopped for a while. His hands were shaking. But this time, he was not alone. Jimin stood behind him, one hand on his back, and said, "The first step is not to open the door. The first step is to forgive yourself." And when the door opened, when the mother's eyes met the eyes of her son, time seemed to stop. No word came out at the beginning, just a glance and a slow step, until finally their bodies were joined together in an embrace that for years had only happened in dreams. Their cries broke out at the same time. Nobody talks about injuries, about distance, about lost time. Because it all crumbles when one simple sentence is said, "I missed you, son." And Jungkook replied with a voice that barely came out of his throat, "Me too, Emma. I'm sorry. I didn't dare go any faster." Jimin did not enter the house. He was just waiting in front of the small garden, smiling when he heard the sound of laughter from inside. Tears alternate with the sounds of cooking boiling in the kitchen, and childhood stories are retold with laughter and new hugs. When Jungkook came out 2 hours later, his eyes were still puffy, but his smile intact. "I thought I was going to fall when I opened that door," he told Jimin, "but it turns out I stand the most upright precisely when I stop pretending to be strong." A few days later, they returned to Seoul, but they did not return in silence. Jungkook wrote a song that he only sang once in a private studio, without a title, without full lyrics. Only the sound of guitars, sighs of breath, and one whisper at the end of the track, "Thank you for coming home, Emma." And in Jimin's journal, a whole page is filled with just this sentence, "Sometimes we have to go up the hill together. Dare to go down alone. I'm glad to be with you, Gus." The days after that did not return to being ordinary. Jungkook seemed calmer, in no hurry to answer when spoken to, and often just smiled softly as Jimin stared at him from a distance. Something has changed, not in appearance, not in the way he sings, but in the way he is present in the room. No longer like someone who feels a constant need to prove themselves, but like someone who finally knows he is accepted, even in the most fragile circumstances. During one of the evening sessions as they returned to the inn, Jimin and Jungkook sat on a wooden balcony overlooking the sea. The wind carries the smell of salt and wet leaves. No lights, Only the light of the moon illuminates their faces. "You know what?" said Jimin. "I was afraid we would never talk like this again." Jungkook looked at her for a long time, then answered, "Me too. But sometimes what's missing isn't us. Sometimes we just have to wait for the right moment to come back." And that time has finally come. At the peak of the RUNSEOKJIN Tour, HYB released a short video. Not a vlog, not a documentary, just a compilation of footage without sound. But between the pieces, there was one scene that made armies around the world pause. Jungkook and Jimin sat side by side in the light of the rising sun, not talking to each other, not looking at each other. It just sits, like two pieces of debris that have finally come back together without being forced. Not because they came back, but because the fans know that the two have been back into each other. A few weeks later, Jungkook wrote a long message on Weverse. It does not mention names, not telling details. But the last sentence of his message, which he wrote in Korean with a 3 at the end, brought millions of ARMY to tears. "If there's one thing I can whisper to myself, I'll tell you, don't be afraid to go home. He's still there. He's waiting for you." And under it, Jimin left a one-word comment: "Always." This story will not be included in the formal record of RUNSEOKJIN's journey, will not be included in the merchandise catalog or announced on a large scale. But the ARMY knows, from all the places they visit, from all the cameras that capture spectacular visual moments, the most meaningful moments happen in silence. Under the sun that reappears after a long night. I in the arms of a mother who never lost love even though time passed. I in the company of two friends who once stayed away from each other and chose to wait for each other. A few weeks after that tour ended, the world began to move again. The big concert was announced, the live broadcast started again, and BTS, as usual, returned to the small screens around the world. But for those who pay attention with heart, there is something different. Not just in the way Jungkook and Jimin look at each other, but in the way they greet the world. They no longer sound like people trying to please everyone. They sound like two human beings who have finally discovered that they are enough just the way they are. Jungkook began wearing a thin black bracelet that he had never worn before. ARMY, who was always observant, noticed that the bracelet looked very similar to the black thread that is commonly given in small temples in Vietnam, a symbol of courage and spiritual protection. During one of the live sessions, when asked about the bracelet, Jungkook only smiled briefly and replied, "This is from someone who said, 'I'm brave enough to go back to being a kid.'" The comment was brief but electrifying because only a few people know what does it mean to be a child. "I dare you to touch me again, dare to cry again, dare to admit to being tired." Meanwhile, Jimin wrote an open letter in the form of lyrics. The song has not yet been released, but as he read it at a private event for the RUNSEOKJIN production team, neither of them could contain their emotions. The content of the lyrics is simple, but heartbreaking. "One day I will disappear. Don't look up on stage. Search where the sun rises, where I sit still, with someone who never left." Of all the stories spread during the tour, the one that settles the most is when a local guide recounts that he saw Jungkook and Jimin sitting together on the stone steps, facing the sea, while dividing a bowl of warm noodles. They didn't speak for almost half an hour, but occasionally bribe each other. Then one of them laughed quietly, and the other said, "You haven't changed, yes. I still use it when I don't need to," and they both laughed a little. Not hard, but sincere. The laughter, which was small and almost inaudible, was louder than all the cheers of the stadium, for it was there that it was heard that their wounds had been given room and finally healed, some time after they returned from the tour. Jungkook visited his mother again, but this time it came not with a burden. It came with a song that he did not intend to release, only to sing once, in the small kitchen of his childhood home. "This song is not for the world," she told her mother, "but for you. Because you're the reason I can sing again, for myself." The mother cried, not because the song is beautiful, but because he knew his son was finally back as himself. And Jimin? He never told the details of their moment on the Vietnamese hill.